Okay, we're now going to turn our attention and get an update on the implementation activities that the staff has been doing regarding revenue recognition. So I'll turn it over to Rachel to begin the discussion. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you. The purpose of this board meeting is for the staff to provide the board with an update on implementation activities related to revenue from contracts with customers since the staff last presented to the board earlier this year in May. This is a non-decision making meeting. In May 2014, the FASB and IASB jointly issued a converged standard on the recognition of revenue from contracts with customers. The board has dedicated significant resources to support the implementation process since the issuance of the standard, in part through the Transition Resource Group. The standard is effective for calendar year public companies in 2018, which is about a month away, although a handful of companies have already early adopted the standard. Since the staff last presented an update to the board on revenue implementation, the FASB staff and board have continued to support the implementation process. The board meeting handout and board memo provide a summary of implementation activities performed over the last 6 months. Some examples of those activities include investor education and technical inquiries, including inquiries about judgmental areas of the standard, such as identifying performance obligations in the franchising industry. The handout also describes the FASB's coordination with other organizations, such as the IASB, the AICPA, and regulators, as well as the staff's monitoring of implementation progress, like early adoption and SAB 74 disclosures. The question for the board today is there any additional information board members would like about the status of implementation of the new revenue standard? I'll now open it up to the board for discussion.
Christine.
So I had just two questions. The first one is, as the technical inquiries have ticked up, I just wanted to know from the staff if they feel that the resources have been sufficient to meet the increased need.
Yeah. So we've got, as you see, we've got the whole team here. We've got a sizable team. And, the way I think about the resources and the adequacy is when we look at the time we're turning these around, I would say most of the inquiries we're getting to close out within a week or two, some even in a matter of days. And our backlog of issues right now, I think we have 2 inquiries. One just came in this week and one came in last week, and we're closing it out. So we're turning them quick. We recognize the urgency, and we feel like things are adequate.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay. And then the other question that I had has to do with the topic 6, the AICPA efforts. And based on the numbers that were in the memo, there were 136 issues that have been raised through that process, and the staff noted that 116 of those had been exposed, 76 finalized, and you noted that the 60 that have not been finalized but have been exposed, that typically there hasn't been a lot of change between the time that it was exposed and finalized, and so it appears that there's some pretty good information out there regarding those items. So that's all well and good. My question has to do with the 20 that have not yet been exposed, and I just wondered if the staff has any additional information about the pervasiveness, the significance, or anything with respect to those 20, and whether there's something lurking there that we need to worry about.
Yep. So we've looked at the 20 issues that haven't been exposed yet. Of those 20, there have been 7 that we've been involved in, so that have come to us as a technical inquiry from the AICPA. And those 7 aren't with us. We've given our feedback, and they moved along. When we look at the other 13 that are still open, they're really spread across a multitude of industries. They're one-offs, very industry-specific. So I don't think there's anything specifically in there that causes us concern when we think about the readiness of the system as a whole.
Thank you.
Jim?
So when I look at the progression and I look at your analysis, I think you can kind of look at it, the first issues at the TRG were really understanding the model. So how does the model work? Maybe some of those were industry specific, but most of those were, do I understand the broad model? How does it work across industries? Some suggestions for clarifications or expedients that I think that the board took up. Then I think we got into, okay, we understand, or at least we get the parameters of the model. How does it now apply sort of in my industry, and how does that then apply across industry? But I think companies sort of look at it as we want consistency, but I also now need to think about the model in my context, and I want to know what my peers are doing. And then I think the AICPA did a good job of saying, okay, but We then also want to make sure that similar fact patterns in similar industries are being thought about the same way. And then you get into, I have very unique facts and circumstances, and I think that's more of sort of the technical inquiry, although I think that the staff has also been very helpful in meeting with industry groups. So, beyond just how does the model work, and I think the franchisor example that you highlight here is one of those, is that this 606 does change the model for very specific guidance in the past on franchisor accounting that goes away, and you're now in the general model. And I think productive meetings with industry folks, and I think most industries are sort of have got that piece, and so I hope that we're entirely at the how does this apply to my fact pattern. That'll continue for the length of obviously RevRec. Again, I think using that one as an example is very helpful to understand that no, 606 doesn't tell you that in all fact patterns you must take an initial franchise fee, defer that revenue over the life of the arrangement. But just like any other arrangement in 606, you have to determine, are there distinct goods or services provided at the outset for which I should be allocating total arrangement consideration to. I think in that one we learned from the industry that there likely could be in many arrangements, site location services, equipment, inventory, training that isn't necessarily specific to the ongoing, operations of the franchise. So, general training, knowledge that, could be taken with you. That kind of thing that you have to think about, are those distinct, and allocating, consideration. And then I think walking through with that industry, thinking about that in the context of total arrangement considerations. So I'm glad that you used that as an example, and I think appropriately so. And I think your memo says we're now sort of in the detailed fact patterns, and we hope that that's waning, but we think it might pick up, post implementation, which is really, I guess, the next phase is monitoring the standards. So I'm very comfortable with where we're at, and thank the team for the update.
So first, I want to thank the team and you, Jim, for leading us through this effort. I agree with what you observed regarding what's in essence paragraph 9, begins in paragraph 9 and 10 in the handout regarding the franchisors. I had similar questions to what Christine had on the AICPA. I kind of wish they were a little further along, but I understand where they are in the process. With respect to convergence and regulators, it's my understanding that we have been in close coordination with the ISB staff, and they are in a similar position where we are, where they have very little or no additional substantive inquiries. And I understand IFRIC recently dealt with a couple of questions. Is that right?
Yep. So they're still managing questions same as us. Nothing, no big aspects of the model similar to us. IFRIC did deal with 3 recent questions. All related to the same area, where they're talking about the criteria to meet overtime recognition and right to payment. And for all 3 of the issues that they've discussed in that space, they had decided that the standard's sufficient to answer those fact patterns, and no standard setting is needed.
Okay. And with respect to the close coordination that you articulate with the Securities Exchange staff and the PCOB staff, it's my understanding that the dialogue is going well, and that there's a strong understanding. And while volume may have picked up, it's volume that can be answered. Yeah.
That's right.
So with respect to the board does plan to continue to devote resources following the effective date and to monitor any questions that come out. And we have the Emerging Issues Task Force that does have capacity to deal with issues. And we'll continue to monitor that for public companies in anticipation of the private company change, which is a year later. Are there any other? No. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Great. Thanks. With that, we're adjourned.